smashed my pinky.
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Thank you for being here. We are so excited. You stopped by, taking a few minutes, taking a few moments to stop by and just listen to this exciting recording of another podcast at Maria's Friend. So let me go ahead and get started. And welcome to Maria and Friends, where we dive into some great conversation and share practical insights that have made a difference in our lives. I'm your host, Maria. And before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. I am not an expert in any way. I'm simply here to share what has worked for me and my guest and hopefully inspire you along the way. So if you are ready to explore new perspectives, learn from personal experience, and uncover tips that could potentially enhance your own journey, then stick around and let us begin the conversation. So today we have Daniel Ibarra. Woo!
I need like a soundboard where I can like play a bunch of noises and stuff.
Oh yeah. You know what? We need to talk about that because I do need during the podcast, I would love to have like when you hear and you hear everybody clapping, yeah.
Oh my god! Like,
How
you
do
remember the so there's a couple ways to do that. Honestly, not to get into tech stuff right before we get
yeah.
into the podcast, but there's a couple ways to do that. You can use what's called the Stream Deck, and a Stream Deck looks like 8 buttons. I think it's 8, 16. They got different sizes, and
Yes.
you can program different stuff, even to the point where you can have like graphics that play at the same time. So like, bam, bam. So I mean, there's ways of doing that.
I just want something that'll go,
Ow.
like, like whatever.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So that'd be
Like
nice. So
I don't know if you see it, but I smashed my finger right when we started. So I'm like,
I did see you. You said, "I," right when we're going live, and I'm like,
ah,
"Son,
I smashed my finger. I'll get injured for this podcast game. This is real life. Oh,
live." So for those of you who don't know it, this is my son, my oldest son, Daniel Ibarra,
what?
and we call him Nano. For those that you will see it on the comments, if they
It's
say
true.
Nano, it's the same, and that's a different story. That's actually a really cool story how you
That's
got
a
your name.
yeah.
You know, what I'm
Diana
saying?
says hola. What's up? What's happening, Diana?
Hi, Diana. Hello, hello. So let's get into it. We are today here with my son, Daniel Ibarra, and we want to have an honest conversation about not being afraid of change. So,
Changes.
so this is what we're gonna. That's our topic for today, and let's get into it, Daniel. Right now,
I'm in. Let's go.
where are you at right now?
I am in the wonderful city of Sterling, Virginia. I am
Sterling.
Sterling, Virginia, right outside of DC, Washington DC. It's in the DMV area. If I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. I just got here.
And we what a change. So let's start by that. Let's start by asking what prompted your decision to leave El Paso,
Mhm.
and how did you start with this process of change?
So I guess we'll start with one thing at a time. The reason why I left, one of the biggest reasons, like that whole, because it's a whole process. We don't have enough podcasts to go over to really talk about everything of what led me to leaving El Paso. Honestly, it's and you were kind of there personally through a lot of it, and it just kind of, it's a culmination of a lot of things. It was a culmination of me wanting to decide. Honestly, I can say I wanted to decide to make a shift in my life. There's a phrase that you use often, and there's a phrase that I use, that now by extension I use often, to kind of get me out of that analysis paralysis type thing. Like, because, and that's the thing. Like, I'm a big person that I'm a genuine overthinker. Sometimes I get in like this
Yeah,
existential like gridlock, and I just get paralyzed. I just can't decide, and I'm just like, I'm sitting there thinking about every outcome. I'm sitting there thinking about every possible thing, and then when it actually happens, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I made it seem way worse than I actually thought.
in your
So
mind. Yeah,
and your mind, it just plays tricks on you if left unchecked. And even and that's the thing. Like, I'm a firm believer in like I'm a firm believer in seeking things in prayer.
yeah,
And the thing is like, it's gonna sound terrible, but sometimes when I pray and I really think about it, it almost makes it worse, because then I start praying for the what ifs and not what's actually happening. So I get
correct.
so lost in the weeds of asking God of what if
Yeah,
could happen, and it's just like, well, that's not happening yet, or nothing's set up to happen. So you get so lost on that end of things that it's like, no, talk about what's happening now. Like, it's okay, but. there's a phrase that we use that you taught me. It's called it goes like that, like agitar los aguas, which means agitate the waters. And the thing is, it's like if you're going to like,
If you're still, like what I mean by that, I've always told you, what I mean by that, sometimes the waters are really still
mhm,
and nothing's going on. So you actually have to get in there and physically create movement,
yeah,
create action, just get something flowing. So
yeah,
it creates the energy and it moves around. And
yeah,
sometimes I've told you when there's not a change and nothing's happening in your life, I always tell you, hey, get those waters flowing.
yeah,
Agita,
mhm,
agita las aguas, because and I get that from the story in the Bible where that man was near the pool of Bethesda. I can't
mhm.
pronounce that. Bethany.
Bethesda.
Yes, and they said that the angels would come down and they would move in the water, and there was activity in the waters,
Yeah,
and sometimes he couldn't get in there because he was paralyzed. He was paralyzed, so he
mhm,
couldn't get in there. So he's, I need somebody to go push me, and sometimes that's what happens. You need to find a way to get into those waters and just move and get in that energy, and things will start moving in your behalf. So, and we
yeah.
have Bridget. Bridget
It
says,
is.
"Hola, so cool to see you with your
He
son."
was.
Oh,
You know
thank
what's
you,
even
Bridget.
cooler? Getting to see me with my mom. What's
So
But
yes,
that yeah, that thing is very true because I came to the realization that every mile begins with a foot. Every tsunami begins with a drop of water. Every every decision every tornado starts with a breeze. I don't know why I'm thinking about natural disasters, but it's the whole thing of like this big thing starts off as a small thing. Like every tree started as a seed. Every plant started off as a seed, and it's like these mighty oaks that have been growing for hundreds of years all started off as a
yes.
little plant, and that's one of the things because
Hi,
uh
Priscilla.
oh yeah, Priscilla says hello friends, what's happening, what's going on,
So
but
yeah,
yeah,
everything starts with
it
a little step.
it starts with the little step, and then I wanted a bigger change in my life. I've done a lot of things in my life, and then I was like, you know what, I want to do something for me. I want to take a chance. I found a way, and I was presented with a way to take a very protected, a very safe, big chance and a big shift, going to a place like I went from Southwest to the East Coast, and for a couple reasons, it's just like this is the biggest shift that I've made, and it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while,
Exactly.
and putting myself in this place. And we're going to talk about it later and why we
Yeah.
decided to start content creation, why we
Yes.
decided to do a couple different things. And for me personally, for what I want to accomplish later on in life, being in an area like this really does facilitate what I want to accomplish.
Exactly.
And that's the
And
whole thing. Like, just agitar los aguas, really.
And I want to say hi to Rubén. Hola, Rubén, ¿cómo estás? Rubén nos está saludando desde Puerto Rico. Rubén is saying hi all the way from Puerto Rico. Hola, Rubén, ¿cómo estás? I hope you're feeling better. Espero que te sientas mejor. Y es gusto verte que estás por aquí. And Bridget, too. Bridget says, never underestimate the small steps. They take you to places. They take you to places, too, for sure. For sure.
They take you places too. Yeah, no, it's quite honest, and that's the thing about that decision paralysis is probably the hardest thing that I've had to grapple with in my young adult life, in my adult life, and Virginia was one of those places where I could, because I didn't move here like by myself. I
Yeah.
came, with some good friends of mine. These guys are my
So
brothers,
this
and
is something that you had been planning. So this
I,
because some people think you just woke up and oh, I'm
I'm
going to
going to
Virginia.
Virginia. No, no, no.
No, it didn't
This
happen that
was
way.
this was honestly 2 years in the making. I think you remember the first time
Yes.
I was like, I'm gonna do it, and then it was like God was like, not yet.
Not yet.
It's
And I
not, it's not a
remember,
no. It's not a no. It was a not yet. And
yes,
remember,
exactly.
and
Exactly. Yeah,
not a
you
lot
need
of
to talk about
people.
that.
And that's the thing, like, because I was
Yes.
like, I'm gonna, and that's the thing. I had been planning to do this honestly, like cards out on the table.
Yes.
I've been planning to do this for a while, and I
Yes.
remember, it started off as like, well, I think I could do this, I can do this, and then I did all the things. I sought wise counsel. I talked to my pastor. I talked to my leadership. I talked to those that I considered to pour out of my life. I talked to friends of mine in church who knew me best and knew my growth. I really did do all the things,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a no. I never got a yes, but it was like I could see. everyone kind of said arrived to the same conclusion of I can just see where that worked, but I don't think it's the right time.
Yeah. And I want
So
before we go on, I want to say hi, Darlene. Thank you for listening. Thank you for connecting. Darlene has a podcast as well, and she's doing really good. So you guys follow her, find her on Facebook. Rubén desde Puerto Rico dice, hola, me estoy recuperando. Hola, Rubén, gracias. Qué bueno que te estás recuperando. Seguimos orando por ti. So yes, so that yeah, that was a difficult, not a difficult.
that was hard. It was hard. It was
But you
hard
know what?
because
I want to go back to that point that you said when you started, because you started that the thought of going to through this change and this transition to move for what we're going to talk about later, which is content creation. And I remember you started decide I want to do this, mom, and I want to do this, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, let's go for it. And then what happens? Boom, I get cancer,
yeah,
and you put everything aside, and we went through that year and a half, and Lord brought us through. And that you said, okay, mom, I'm ready. I kind of think, and then the pandemic came through, and then so it was. You're exactly right. You when you wanted to do this stuff, it was never a no,
yeah.
and it was never a not yet. And sometimes that's where we need to understand God's timing in our life, that just because it's not happening now, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen again. We
Yeah.
have to sometimes deal with God's no, with God's yes, and
And
with
that's the
God's
hardest.
not yet. So and then what have you learned when reflecting on that you had to wait on God for the right timing? How was that process for you?
I'll tell you, it was tough. It was hard because it's when you feel like you're asking God and you're
Yeah.
praying and you're doing diligence and all the things you're supposed to do, there's a sense of entitlement that can sneak its way in. And it's kind of like when kids get spoiled, telling a kid no or just not answering him, kids go crazy. And now, I'm not saying that I was a spoiled child, but that waiting was difficult because that waiting was hard because it got to this point where I was like, dude, I did all the things that I'm supposed to do. I checked the boxes. I did the things. I talk to people. I have a plan. I set things up, or I have everything pending, and it's like you almost feel like the thing is, no one tells you that when you wait, it's easy to feel like a failure
Yes.
because it's like a firework. You see the
Mhm.
fuse go, you have it, and then the fuse goes into the firework, and then it doesn't explode yet. And you're like, ah, well, this firework sucks,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's what it feels like. You feel like a dud. You're like, dang. And then it's hard to, and then especially if you're a person like me who overanalyzes things, and you're just
yeah.
like, man, it's not a failure to launch. It's just a not yet.
That and that's exactly like I said, that the waiting is really hard for some of us, but the thing that sometimes we have to understand is that there's certain things, and even in us, that have to be processed, that they
Mhm.
have to be worked out before you
Yeah.
move into your next.
Yeah, and I guess the biggest thing overall was that I really, 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 honestly, truly learned is the grit that it takes to wait because it is hard. It is like it's what in total maybe a 3 year process because I've been trying to move and make this happen for 2 3 years, and it's like trying to stick to that, and that's the probably the biggest lesson that I've learned of there's a strength in waiting,
Yes,
and it's hard, but
it's like a muscle that you develop.
yes, and it's I wouldn't say it's a muscle, it's more of a stamina you have to build
Yes,
because it's exhausting. It's yeah, and then the thing is it's like yeah, that's probably the hardest part, that there's a stamina to waiting and there's a strength in it, and that's something that can be developed. And the thing, and what I also learned too, quite honestly, was when I learned to wait and be okay with things, it made me strong enough to be strong for people and then to teach them other lessons. So
correct.
not to get too far into it, because I had already gone through the different things that I'd gone through before in the waiting and the not yet and that I was able to be a pillar for my brother when he made a huge life change, and
Correct.
I got to be that pillar, and it wasn't even like a pillar, it was like I always thought about it like a pulley. like a pulley when you're lifting like a bucket or something, like in a well, you put
Yeah.
that string through the little thing and you pull up the bucket. It's easier than throwing the rope straight down in there and pulling it up. Now you have that pulley that makes things easier, and I was able to be that pulley for my brother because he made a huge life decision,
Correct.
and I
Correct.
was able to be that strength point for him. I was just like, hey man, it's not that hard. It sucks. So now his struggles were halved. Like I went through this long version of it so my brother could go through half of it, and whoever he teaches that to now starts to minimize so he can be that strength point, and then we start to build our network of resiliency because now we know how to
Yeah.
be there for each other because we've all taught each other these lessons.
Yes. And Shannon says there's a strength in waiting. That's good. It really is.
There is, yeah.
That one thing is that I know that because I'm a believer that a lot of times you learn more when you're going through difficult times than when you're going through happy times. There's nothing like a trial to teach you some patience. There's nothing like a waiting on God to teach you, okay, what is it? Let's work on me, let's work on my character, let's work on that. And I being on the other end of seeing you go through this period of time and getting ready for this change,
Yep.
I saw you grow. I saw you
Yep.
grow when God said that no to you. Ah,
Don't cry on a podcast. Don't cry on a podcast.
I'm gonna be. I saw you grow when God said no, and God said no to you. And even though
Yeah.
you knew, and I want you to talk about how you know God's purpose in your life and how you came about to that. We'll get to that. But I saw you learn when God said no to you several times, and when God told you not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, it wasn't a no. It was a not yet.
It was a not
Honest.
yet, don't move yet. I saw how in that time you grew. In that pain you grew. In that uncomfortable spot.
Mhm.
In that uncomfortable place, you took it. You took it. You grew from a little boy to a man and
We've arrived to the part of the podcast where my mother's unable to speak. I will continue to the discussion. Absolutely, there was a part where it was that not yet. That not yet gave me the time. It's like the only way I can think about it is like when you cook and you have to let some stuff simmer for it to be correct. There's a time, there's a place. It's like and it's going to be the right time. It's going to be the right time for it to happen because had I not waited and went earlier, things could have ended up disastrously. They could have been way more difficult. And I remember even getting out here on this back end of that process when I got here. Remember and I'm gonna tell, like I'm gonna bring it up when I was like stressing out after I got here, and there's some stuff that didn't come through yet, and it was like pause. God was like,
yes.
give yourself a pause, give yourself a
Yeah.
second. And I
Yeah.
remember, I mean, I guess just to put it out there, after I got here, the trials didn't stop. I mean, and that's the thing, like, and I wanted to get into it a little bit later, but there was a mantra I kept saying to myself that last half of that year before I got out here, and you'll see it. It's actually on my cover on my Facebook, and it's make it work until you make it out.
Yes.
Right? You just make it work. You just hang in there until you make it out. And then I was sitting there, and then when God was like, remember when I was like stressing out about all the stuff, I
Yeah.
didn't have all my
Yeah.
stuff yet, and it was like a pause. I remember just hearing in my head, "You made it out. Now
Yes.
what?" It's not
Yeah.
enough to make it out. Like if you keep praying and you keep getting it, what happens when you actually get what you're praying for? What's the next steps? It's not enough to get what you
Exactly.
got. What are the steps
Exactly.
after that? And that's the thing is like, you're like, I want this. God, I want a new car. God, I want a new car. God, I want a new house. God, I want a new car. Now you got it. Now what? What are you going to do with that house? What are you going to do with that car? It's not enough to, and it sounds terrible, but I'm going to quote The Dark Knight. But
Yeah.
when the Joker says you're catching you is like when a dog catches a car. When I finally get it, I don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. Right.
And it's
Exactly.
like a dog fights so hard, but and it's like, have you ever seen that meme where the two dogs are barking at each other and they open the
Yeah.
gate and they just kind of stop and stare at each other? and that's kind of what it is. And I remember when so what had happened is I moved out here, and the shipping company that was supposed to ship my vehicle just kept canceling. They couldn't ship it, they couldn't find a driver. It was like maybe what, like 2 weeks in that
Yeah.
process of trying to figure it out. They're like, we can't do it, we can't do it. Oh, I found somebody. Oh, they canceled, we're gonna have to charge you double, all this stuff. And I was like, I can't, I just need it. And that's again, that proves
And
the
I remember
process.
we prayed.
I had
I remember you called, and you called the church,
yeah,
and we got the ladies. And for those of you who don't know it, I work at the church. So I remember you calling and telling, hey mom, bring it up to the
this
garden.
is
We
this is what's
pray.
going on. And then
We need to
I kid
pray.
you not, I kid you not, maybe about the next day they were like, on 30 minutes, they're like, hey, we try to charge your card because the driver's gonna go get the vehicle. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
let's go. And so during that time on the back end over here, I had an agreement with the being here where I'm at. They're like, hey, you don't have to be working immediately, but eventually the agreement is you have to work to pay bills. You have to work to do things. You have to, because I was like, I was in a place like, man, I need to figure out a way to where I can get some income going because I do need to build things. I need to have an income to support the things that I need to do. And I remember I was applying. Like I was applying for maybe about like what felt like 12 hours a day, and
Wow.
everything dead silent on every single front. But literally the day they delivered my car, I did
Amen.
5 interviews, and it all
Wow.
stacked up one after another. And it was just like, man, it just like boom, 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 5 interviews, one after another. And I was like, I'm gonna do all the interviews and then take stock of what the best fit is for me. I was like, now I have options. Now I have, because I waited, because everything fell in place. And then like the job that I ended up, because initially I was like, well, I can't go anywhere. I'm just going to work remote, whatever. The second I get my car and then it's
Amen.
confirmed to be here, they're like, hey, we got a job for you making over $21 an hour, doing basically the same thing that you did in El Paso before you left. And I'm like, oh my
Yes.
God. I was like, there's no way. And I remember when I specifically asked in the interview, I was like, how long have you guys had this opening? They're like, 20 minutes after you applied. And
Wow.
I was
Look
just
at God.
like,
Pastor
okay.
Jason, Pastor Jason says, yes, the garden.
The garden,
And
yeah, yeah. The garden
Pastor Jason
is
has been in the garden with us
yeah,
from the beginning, from the beginning. And
garden is the secret spot.
Diana says, portals open up in the garden. And Diana says, look
Mhm.
at God. He had it all lined up for
I
you.
know, and it's funny
Amen.
because like all I had to do was wait, but like that's the hardest part. It sounds ridiculous, but I think waiting generally has a negative connotation. And I remember when I was a lot younger, I didn't understand my elders when they were okay with waiting.
Yeah.
And they were just like, no, 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 está bien, mija, así pasa, and you just wait, and the good things happen.
And Melissa Ramirez, she says, so proud of you, Daniel. Waiting isn't just about what you receive at the end of the waiting, but who you become while you
I
waited.
waited, yeah,
Let me read that again because that's pretty good.
that'll
So, but
preach.
gotta preach, gotta preach. It says, so proud of you, Daniel. Waiting isn't just about what you received at the end of the waiting, but who you became while you waited. And that
Yeah,
is so true. That is so true. And Pastor Jason says, sometimes you
you
have
have
to
to move.
move
Gotta
to
move.
see God move. That's
Yeah,
good because there was several times that you knew what you were supposed to do, right? But you didn't know how things were going to line up. You didn't know about these jobs. You didn't know how you're going to get the truck over there. You didn't know if the guys were going to receive you in their home. You didn't. There was so many. You just knew the direction, and that's where I saw you grow in God. When you trusted, you know the
yep,
direction, you know what you're supposed to do, but waiting on God matured you to understand and learn how to follow God in the next step and trust
definitely.
in that. Because I don't want to keep crying, but it's such a breaking. I saw you break. I saw you, God, really break not your spirit, but just grow you, like Melissa was saying. The person you became while you were waiting,
Mhm.
the person is already setting you up for the next things that are coming, because you've already learned the lessons that you need to be learning while you waited. So let's then in your next step, when things don't go the right way,
Right.
when things don't flow, you have developed that understanding. I'm going to wait on God. I'm
Absolutely.
gonna wait on God because it's He's gonna come through, because I'm here, and God's gonna do it, and He's gonna come through. And you develop that, you grow that. So what one of the things that I'm just really have understanding that not only did you grow, but I grew.
Yeah.
Not only did you go in that process, but in that process, I had to take a step back. I had to take a step back and stop being such a helicopter mom
Yeah.
and have God deal with you, and
Yeah.
have God his and you grow your relationship with God. Because one of the toughest things that we do as moms, that we just want to protect our kids, and there's a time that I'm like, okay, no, I can't do this anymore. It has to be you and God. You're gonna have to learn this lesson. And I can pray you through it. I can pray you through it, but I can't walk for you.
Yeah.
I will pray you through through it. I will support you, but I cannot walk that walk with you. You
Yeah.
have to take that step on your own. You have to grow. You have to do for whatever God wants you to do.
And it's as a child who has a mother and parents that come and clutch for them, I go, it's weird because I don't know, maybe it's just me. It would have to have other children of we'd have to have other children's of prayer warriors, but there comes a point where I hit my limit, and it's like the second one that's been stored up, and it's like once you get to that point where like I can't, I can't, God, I rely on you, I'm doing the thing, I got that. And then it almost feels like this, you're just like, ugh, I'm so tired, and then they're like, oh cool, we're waiting for you to show up, and they give you all this stuff, and then you can go. And it's like it's more important almost to be supported than it is to be taken care of.
Yes.
And that it's a weird, it feels like a paradox, but it's more important to be supported than to be taken care of, because I've learned how to, I think in this process, to hit a different stride, because now it's not a stride, it's one thing to sprint, but it's another thing to uh like the longevity is the focus now. It's not about getting stuff done quickly, it's the longevity of it all. And that's where you learn to rely on that support. That's where you learn to rely on people in your life who are going to pour into you. And it's weird because waiting teaches you how to grow, but also waiting truly gets rid of the excess.
What do you mean?
So if you've ever
I
seen,
know what you
I,
mean, but I want you. It's I know. Woo, that woo. Waiting. Oh my God, that'll preach. Waiting will
waiting
help you get rid of the access. Woo!
waiting will
That
help you get
right
rid of the
there.
excess.
Woo!
It really,
That.
really will.
Oh my God, that is you're my son. That is so good.
I'm a third
Wow, that is
generation
good.
third generation minister. Anyway, the thing
Wow,
is,
that is good.
what I've learned is waiting will help you. Waiting will get rid of the excess, because I wouldn't even know how to describe it. It's like, um, you really know who sticks by your side and who's meant to be in your life. You'll really, oh, I can put it like this: you'll know the difference between a branch and a leaf after you go through winter.
Wow.
You
Wow.
really will understand who's right there with you. You'll really understand who's got your back, who's right there with you, who's meant to be in your life. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like when a house gets hit with a flood, all that drywall falls off, but you still see the internals, like the strong pieces of wood that hang in there. And that's truly it. I don't know how else to explain it, because and that's the thing. Like it shows you your foundation. It shows you what you're supposed to be. It shows you that framework. Now you can start again. Now you can build. Now you can do what you're supposed to do, and it really shows you who you are. It strips everything away. It shows you who you're supposed to be. Shows you an honest version of yourself and who you are at the end of the day. And the thing is, it's like You can't do anything if you're not doing it for you. Not you can't do anything if you're not doing it.
Amen. And I want to say hi to Miss Sally, to Miss Amanda, and thank you so much for everybody commenting and everything. And but I want to touch on that because when another thing that I saw you go through is what well in the process that you're waiting, and you said it helps you get rid of the excess while you were waiting, you kept planning, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to take that. And I saw you several times, like I call it rag out, but I saw you go through a pruning, a cleaning, a spring cleaning, and you had all your stuff. You had boxes and boxes of
Yeah,
stuff. You had picture frames, you had this, you had that, you had microphones, you had cables, all the stuff that you had a bunch of stuff. So every time you were getting ready to go and move, you would rag it out. You would say, "Okay, I'm not going to take this, and I'm not going to take that, and I'm not going to take this," and then you wouldn't go, and then you stopped again. So you would okay go through the process again while you're waiting, and again you did it like several
yeah,
times you did that process where you ragged out stuff and took stuff away
yeah.
while you were waiting. So even to the last point, even to the last week, you dwindled everything down to almost two boxes.
It was one box, and it was literally, I think, a box and like a backpack.
And it was crazy because for this journey that you started, you dwindled and you have allowed room for for newer things. And you even came to the realization that you said, "Mom, it's okay if I don't take everything because in my new place, I ooh woo! Oh my God. Because I just like in my new place, you told me, Mom, in my new place, I will get better things. It will be replaced. So you were so worried about losing all these things or leaving behind so many things that you came once you moved and you said,
Mhm.
Mom, it's okay. I can get all that back. Mom, it's okay. I can buy all that. Mom, it's okay because I'm gonna get a better thing over here. Because
I Yeah,
what doesn't because look, what doesn't work over here, what works over here not necessarily works in the place that you're in right now.
yeah.
So that's why you have to get there so you can get an understanding on what the new things that God will bring in your life
Mhm.
that will work in the area that you're in right now.
I had to realize that I was so obsessed with the old stuff. The whole point of growing is for new things. So if I kept all the old stuff, I never would have grown. And again, that to go back to that previous idea of I didn't realize it until I got out here, but that process of waiting gave me time to revise and
Yes.
to revisit and to rethink and to give it a, and that's the thing, it's and again going back to agitating the waters and starting,
Yeah.
it's waiting is a gift. It's what you do with that waiting to help prepare for the movement. Because again, it's going back to the whole thing of like, that mantra. I was really hyping myself up. I was like, I'm about to move. I'm gonna do my next. God's got me in the pocket. And it's like,
That's like a new song.
yeah, and it's like you're hyping yourself up. You're like, I got this. God's gonna give me the thing. God's gonna give me the stuff. God's gonna do it. And then it's like, if you take the chance to really reevaluate and think about what's gonna happen once you get that, implementing it is gonna be a breeze. And it's one of those things of just like I took that time. I was gifted time, and it took that time to
Wow.
reevaluate what I needed. I took that time to replan and to revisit what's really going to be beneficial to my life. So when I got to this new place, it's like, so when I got to this new place, there was this amount of provision that was provided to me, and I knew exactly how to put it into place. I knew exactly what to do with it. I knew exactly where things went. And it's like I was so worried about keeping all this old stuff that like I literally came to a brand new room with a brand new bed, with a brand new dresser,
Yes.
with a brand new
Everything new.
TV. I was like, dude, if I brought all my other stuff from over there, none of it would have fit, and I would have looked like a punch up. It would have been terrible.
So you see how this even that and even that well Sally says when you hit rock bottom, you feel the world ends, and that there's no turning back. But God is so powerful and so loving that He's always by your side. And Pastor Jason says,
Yeah.
you can watch and support a sprint from one spot, but to watch a marathon from the beginning to end requires even the spectators to move with you. Woo! Powerful stuff today. Powerful stuff.
You
Powerful
know
stuff.
what's funny is I had been thinking about that rock bottom thing, like it's like, I hit my rock bottom, woe is me, and I had to come to the realization that what I thought was rock bottom was the first step on a new staircase.
Woo! Oh my God! We need to get all these sayings, and I'm gonna listen to hi Gio. I'm gonna listen to this podcast again and get some of those quotes and put them on t-shirts. But
Yeah, because
say
that's
that
what it
again. Say that again. Say that again.
what I thought. Well, I had to come to realize that what I thought was my rock bottom was the first step on a new staircase. And that's
Woo!
really what it felt like because at the first step you don't have anything, like you're just ground zero, ground zero, like literally ground zero. But you literally have nowhere to go but up. It sounds lame, but it's a new staircase, and you wouldn't have been ready for that if you're used to the old staircase.
Amen. Amen. Pastor Jason, ¿qué dice? Oh, Bridget says rock bottom is the first step to a new staircase. Yes. Amen. And Dana says, like drowning in a glass of water. And the
That's
comments
what
are
it
going
feels like.
crazy.
Yeah.
Sally says, I want that t-shirt too. All right, we'll get you guys those t-shirts. Amen. And new staircase.
A
Praise
new
God. Thank you
staircase. Yeah.
guys. The comments are just woohoo. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that when people put their comments and share and everything. Amen. So now that you're learning these lessons and we're putting them to practice, and I just want to say that this didn't happen overnight.
Oh no.
This
Uh,
didn't happen
at
overnight.
least, what would you say? 2 years, almost 3 years
Almost three
in the
years.
making. There's a shirt I keep seeing on my Instagram ads, but it says, what is it? A celebrity overnight, 10 years in the making.
A celebrity overnight, 10 years in the making. And that's what
Yeah.
people don't understand because sometimes they'll see you
It's a
starting to
grind.
succeed. They
It's a
started you
grind.
succeed for like right now. I'm real excited because this podcast is taking, I'm starting to build and a following, and people are starting to watch, and we're starting to get numbers, and people are, it's easier for now for me to say, hey, you want to
Yeah.
come to a podcast? Now
Mhm.
they'll say yes faster to me, and we're doing our work. We're doing what we're called to do. But I've been doing this for about 2 years.
Yeah, a
So
little bit
this is
longer. Yeah.
I've been working on my confidence. I've been working on getting comfortable in front of the camera. I've
Camera.
been
Yeah.
to learn. You had to teach me how to upload a YouTube video. You had to teach
Yeah.
me I'm still learning how to edit. You need to taught me how to work all this camera, how to work all this. So
Lighting, cameras,
lighting. So
all that
yes,
stuff.
a-
Yeah, software. Yeah.
again, in the waiting, I was in the waiting. I was in the waiting of learning, and now so all these things that we just think, oh, overnight things happen overnight. No, you have to go through the process and do like we've been talking. Get rid of things in your life, and in this process,
Yeah.
I had to get rid of my ideas. I had to get rid of my thoughts, and one of the things that and Gio says right here, I'm a witness of those 2 years. Yeah, yeah. She did a couple of podcasts. And some of
Yeah.
those, if you go all the way in the YouTube channel, you can see them how bad they were. Well, not when, you can see the growth. You can see the growth from where we started. So and it's been wonderful. So now I want you to talk about now, you know when did you know? Let me rephrase the question. When did
Yeah.
you know? Because I want you to talk about a vision that you had when you really got clarity on what God spoke to you that the new ministers are going to have and knew a different way of reaching the masses. And I want you to talk to that because it's a lot of people have talked about this, but I
Mhm.
want you to share your understanding on the role that content creation plays. And because I want I want you to, before you talk about that, I want to say that as your mother and as a pastor's daughter, I thought you were going to be minister. My hope for you, my vision for you, since you were a little boy, is, oh my God, he's gonna be in a suit and a tie, and he's gonna be preaching, and he's gonna be in a pulpit. And I had this vision, like I saw my dad, that I would see you. Like the vision in my mind was like how I saw your dad
Yeah.
preaching, and your dad and my dad. So I'm thinking, and then when I see that that's not the path that God was taking you, and
Yeah.
when I came to the realization that my expectations had to die, my dreams, my own plans for you had to die. And I remember, oh my God, I can be on camera. I remember the day that I had to have a funeral for my expectations. I had to have a funeral for what I thought I wanted you to do. For this, for my heart, I had to have a funeral and say, okay, God, my dreams for him are going to die. My expectations for him are going to just need to die.
Yeah.
My thoughts, my dreams, my agenda for him has to die.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, okay, Lord, he's in your hands. He needs to follow your will, your dream, the purpose, whatever you created him to do. That's what he needs to do, not what I want,
Yeah.
not what my dad wants, not what his dad wants. And I remember there was such a release when I had that encounter with God. And I said, okay, my expectations die. He's in your hands. I'm going to just let it go. I prepared him the best way I could. You take over, God. And whatever your plan and your will for his life, that's what he needs to do.
On
So, and
that,
tell me when you
yeah.
tell us about that moment when
So
you realized
so
exactly, because I
I
know
guess
you've been having the dream for a while, but yeah,
yeah, well, I guess we'll start because quite honestly, when you had that funeral for your expectations of me, that allowed the new version, the current version of the version of me that's coming into reality now exist. Because from my perspective, as the oldest child who would have been a third generation pastor in a lineage of church that all shared the same ministry, I watched what would have been my future play out because I look like my dad, right?
yeah,
I look very much like my dad. If you've seen my dad, I'm a spitting image of my dad. So as an older child, I had to watch what I had to do in a couple years,
yes,
and I had to play out, and then I had to watch my dad struggle. I had to watch my dad, you know, just get tested a lot. And so it was this thing of I got to watch the trial run of something I didn't want to do. And
wow,
if I ever said I didn't want to do it, I was failing everybody. So the thing is as soon as you had that funeral, I found my freedom. If that
say,
makes sense.
say that again, say that again, say that again.
as
Wow,
as
say
soon
that
as
again.
as soon as you had that funeral for whatever expectations that you had for me in ministry as whatever, I found my freedom. And I think that's a lot of things that never gets discussed, least of all with pastor kids, most of all with pastors kids, because there's this expectation of your parents are ministers, your pastors, whatever, you have to carry the lineage. And then being in a ministry where that torch is passed down to men, it now became you don't have an option. You're going to take this torch, but also if you take this torch and fail, no matter how much you don't want to do it, if you drop this torch, you failed three generations of people that
Exactly,
came before you.
exactly.
And then
The
it was just
pressure,
like,
yeah,
I
the
was like,
pressure.
I don't want to do that, dude. Like that doesn't look fun at all. Like, and that's the thing. It's like, and one of the things for us, particular, and kind of getting to that point of where that shift became apparent was that was before technology started to shift as much as it did, because there was a huge shifting that really happened, and we live in a world now post pandemic where technology has just exploded. Like even the platforms that we're using now are free, accessible. The barrier to entry is very low. The reason why I preface all of that is I specifically remember in the series of about four different times I had dreams and clear images and clear prophecies of things that happened that are happening. I remember the very first one. I don't think Andre is in the podcast or Alejandro's watching live, but Andre's dad. Pastor Alex told me one time they were living with us at the time. I don't know if you remember. They were living with us, and I was just going to school. I was getting ready to go to work, and Pastor Alex is like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he was like, "I keep having this dream. I see you teaching other people in different countries with technology. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the technology is, but I see you teaching people with technology, and you're calling your mom telling you you're all right." And I was just like, I don't. I'm like, okay. I didn't think of anything at the time. So he was like, I see you calling your mom, telling her that you're all right, but you're teaching other people with technology.
Oh, okay.
And then
Woo.
so I was like, okay. So I just kind of kept that in the back of my mind. Couple years pass by, we go through a bunch of stuff, we go through all the things that we go through. We end up closing the church, we end up doing that, and then that's when we get to the Rock. I get to the Rock and I start serving, and then Pastor Eric is just like, hey, we got this opportunity, we got this thing, are you interested? I was like, technology is cool, I guess, or whatever. And so he's like, literally, we got there that Wednesday, remember, we got there
Yes.
that Wednesday, and immediately by the next Sunday I was already serving in media ministry, and it just took off. A couple years later, it was the IROC conference, and that's where I get the Watchtower Media name from. It was the IROC conference, and it was the biggest conference we had. We probably got some emojis that might be before the end. Pastor Jason remembers IROC, but Pastor Callens, oh yeah, Imani remembers. Imani was there for Iraq. Basically what had happened, it was everything was just falling this radar. It was crazy. Prophecies were just like
Yes.
being let off like fireworks. It was crazy. All kinds of stuff. I remember I told everybody, actually Imani might have been there. I told every single camera person, I was like, dude, lock your cameras in place. Everybody in the booth, all of you need to go up to the top. I
Yee.
will stay
Wow.
up. I'll stay up here
Yeah.
and manage everything because I know all the tech. I can run this entire service by myself, but I will be mad if you guys miss out on whatever's going on right now because you guys need to get this vibe. You guys need to get this spirit falling.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of stuff happening right now. This man of God said everybody needs to come up here if you want something. Everybody needs to clear out and get up there.
Wow.
I can hold it down. I'll be fine. I'll get mine later.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody goes up. Everybody's up there, and then they're just praying. Everybody's falling out. Ba 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 ba. Everything's moving. Pastor Count is just moving around. And if you've ever seen pastors in like holistic get it mode,
Yes.
they're not looking around. They're just got their eyes closed, or they're just like knocking everything down. I remember clear as day. He stops and he turns, and then he points at the back. He's like, "The watchtower has to watch over everybody. Bless the watchtower." And I was like,
Yep.
he's like,
Yep.
blessings will befall the watchtower. Blessings will come upon the watchtower because the watchtower sees everything coming. The
Yes.
watchtower is the one that watches everything happen. The watchtower is what watches over everybody for it to happen. And there was just so many deep
Do you
meanings.
remember when Pastor Jason prayed for you and also he confirmed that?
Yep.
Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. So, and that's the thing. It's all been linking together, of the whole thing. Of I remember when, like, yeah. I mean, now that you let the cat out of the bag, I remember Pastor Jason was praying for us, and again, it was another garden moment,
It was
and
a garden. It
it
was,
was like a
oh my God,
heavy.
it was powerful. It
Yeah, it
was
was it
crazy.
was it was it was a garden moment, and then I remember I was just sitting there. I was just chilling. I've learned to chill, like just to kind of hang out in the presence and just like it's second nature. It's cool. I'm. It sounds terrible, but I'm used to this. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get it. And so we're hanging. I'm hanging out. That sounds weird. I'm hanging out in the presence of God. Uh, we're just hanging out, chilling, and then it just starts to flow. I'm like,
That's another
oh,
t-shirt. Hanging and chilling in the presence of God. Oh, I like that.
chilling in the presence of God. But it's funny because it's a weird thing because you could be in chill mode and you're like, oh, this is different, and then it gets just like heavy, and you're just like, some stuff is going to happen. And I remember when it gets heavy, I started seeing blue energy just like around the walls, and I started seeing blue energy. I was like, man, I watch too much anime. There's just like blue energy everywhere. I'm seeing stuff, and then sure enough, Pastor Jason just like he's like, hey, um, and speaking of chilling in the presence of God, if you've ever given a word from Pastor Jason, it's the chillest, most heaviest, most
It's powerful.
powerful thing you've ever felt in your life. He was just like, hey, Daniel, you're seeing a bunch of stuff right now. God is saying that you're a seer. You see things happen. You see the movement. You see the presence of God. You see all these things. And you're a seer, you're a watcher, your brother's a listener. And I was just like, what? So many things make sense now, just because of some other things that we can get into later that happened into my life. And so kind of fast forwarding to that, probably the biggest, most affirming thing that really changed that. It was the second garden moment
Yeah.
ever in my life. And I remember uh was I was it Pastor Linda? I think it was Pastor Linda, right? No. It was Pastor TT. Pastor
Oh,
TT
Diana
was,
was there. Diana was
yeah,
there.
Diana was there.
Diana
Yeah.
was there. She was there. She's a witness
Yeah.
too. She
Yeah.
Diana will not let us lie. It's true.
Yeah. And I remember when I think if I remember correctly, it was Pastor TT. She said she had this dream about me
Yes, it
that
was Pastor TT.
uh that I was that we were in a place or whatever, but I was holding in my hands a rainbow, and that it was just coming out, and I was holding in my hands, a rainbow, and that was just me holding. I was like, that's cool, but kind of weird, like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like that's kind of tight, but like, what does it mean? So it just sat with me all day, and I was working on some stuff, and I started researching like what the word has to say about rainbows, what the context of rainbows in the Bible, just all these stuff and meanings and all this stuff. And I was like, maybe I'm thinking about it too hard. And then so I just watched a random podcast
Yes.
about this pastor discussing uh, the context of Noah and what the rainbow signified and what it represented and all that stuff. Okay, the and I remember having this conversation with you when streaming technology changed, when we made the transition from we're about to get real nerdy for a second. When we went to RCA, which is the three little cables, the red, yellow, white, when we transitioned from those to HDMI cables,
Yes.
we went from being able to broadcast and process three colors to now all the colors for HDMI. And
Wow.
and when that prophecy came, I was like, oh my god, from a tech aspect,
Yes, I remember you
I
explaining
put
that.
I
I was
put the
like, what?
I,
What?
and so
What?
I like, because it represented that back in the generation that came before me on TV, you literally couldn't see every color in the rainbow on TV
Yes.
because you could only broadcast three color, red, green, blue. It's still true today for the most part, but when you go to HDMI, you can now see more colors and hear
Yes.
more sounds because HDMI processes sound and video at the same time.
Yeah.
What I understood in that was me holding a rainbow, because the context of the rainbow was that God promised not to destroy the earth ever again, but Noah's children were now responsible and charged with taking the word of God and duplicating it through the entire earth.
Wow.
Where that comes into play is like, now I have this ability to broadcast and take every color of the
Wow.
rainbow and present it in its truest form through the entire earth, because that's my charge as a child of Noah. I now have the ability to take streaming technology and push this
Wow.
image through the entire earth infinitely on repeat forever, because that's our commission. And specifically in your hands, because when you're streaming and stuff, you're using technology, you're using what we're using right now. And that's why the rainbow was in my hand, to not to basically remind people of this is the promise, but to duplicate that image infinitely. And I took it from this incredible tech aspect of, when you duplicate an image, if you didn't know the way video works, while you have 24 frames a second, 30 frames a second, whatever, video works like flip books. And this was the lesson I taught to the kids at the church when I was there. The way video works is, it's a giant flip book, right? When you watch a movie, it's a giant flip book. It's a bunch of pictures end to end to end to end, creating that image over and over again. You see 24 pictures a second. That creates motion. So by definition, when you watch a video, it's a bunch of images duplicated
Wow.
over and over and over and over and over again. So it
Wow.
all connected for me in my head of just like, oh, I'm supposed to teach people how to duplicate these images, because now when I teach you how to duplicate those images, I'm now
Yes.
duplicating
Yes.
the knowledge so you can
Yes.
duplicate further, and it goes forever infinitely in all directions.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Woo!
So
Drop
and
don't do it, right? But yeah.
I got three of them. But it was that whole thing because then it went a little bit further. I remember when I told you the most dangerous statement I've ever told another person alive in my it well to me the most dangerous statement I've ever heard. I was just like, I don't remember what had happened that day, but I was just so frustrated with a lot of things, and it just dawned on me, and I'm like, oh, content creators are going to be the new ministers,
Yes. Not the new minister, but like another level of
the next
ministry. And I
wave.
remember I remember you had a vision of this. I like a something clicked. So I want you to talk about that dream and stuff, but it's crazy.
There was a couple,
Hi,
and
Sally says, you guys are awesome. Thank you, Sally.
thank
Thank
you,
you,
thank you,
Sally.
thank you. I don't even want to call it dreams because it's something that I was thinking about a lot, and it was like a slow puzzle kind of working itself and clicking together, because I'd remembered I was watching. This was around the time like post pandemic where comedians were blowing up because now
Oh
they're stuck.
yeah.
Because comedians couldn't tour, musicians couldn't tour, comedians couldn't tour, and I'm a big fan of stand up comedy and a big fan of just like music and musicians. So during the pandemic, during the shutdown, they had to get creative. So now a lot of guys, because they couldn't tour anymore, because they couldn't go to venues, they couldn't go to wherever, they started releasing their stuff online. Namely, I'll name drop, but Andrew Schultz is now one of the biggest comedians with the biggest podcast because during the pandemic, he started taking his tour clips and uploading them as YouTube shorts, as TikToks, and everything, really just repurposing his comedy that he can no longer tour. Releases during at that time he released, I forget the name of the special, but basically he declined I think it was a $2 million deal to independently release his own stand-up set
Wow.
uh digitally, and he ended up triplicating his money. Where that becomes important is not because of the money, because it proved a principle
Yeah.
of you can have further reach without having to have the traditional means of
Correct.
distribution and all that. And I think one of the biggest things that stuck with me is I remember seeing churches, for lack of a better term, that were going belly up because nobody could go to church anymore.
Yeah.
Like nobody could go to church, nobody could get out. I mean, you had parking lot services, you had different forms of engagement, but I just remember thinking, I'm like, man, the only people that are surviving right now, sounds terrible, but are like comedians and musicians that are learning to use the platform. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh my god, this makes so much sense. And if you guys have ever seen Ruslan KD on
Yes.
YouTube, he's blowing up a little more now, but he's a YouTuber that's Christian.
Yes.
And so he's like, I can share and he's very upfront. He's like, this is what the word says. I'm not here to argue with anybody because this is what it says, the point blank, and all that. And I remember thinking, man, this dude never has to take up, he never has to fight for anybody for offering. He never has to, wait for people to do praise and worship. He never has to do all the pedantic, not the pedantic, but like all the normal rituals of church. He can just boom, get straight into it. What do you guys think? Let's go with the next narrative and really, 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 really talk about stuff. And I remember seeing just I can't name, there's so many guys, and
There's
I
so
just remember
many, so many. Even that
Tim, what is it,
old guy
Tim
that,
Ross?
yes, Tim Ross is another
Tim
one.
Tim Ross was another one that he
He
went
is
through every
amazing.
he went through every step, just like, and
Yes.
that's why I felt a lot of, I'm like, I understand the struggle, because he tried the music route, he tried the pastor route, he tried the book route, he tried all that stuff, and he was like, I'm just not seeing it. And then he was like, God told him to start a podcast.
Yes.
He was like, nah, that's weird. And then here you go. Now he can fully, without regulation, and not necessarily regulate. Like the only person he has to answer to is God. I think
Yes.
he said it time before. He's only got to answer to God and his wife.
And
And
now he has an application in everything with all the Bible studies and all scripture and teaching and courses. So
yeah,
it's like a
Kev on
whole,
stage. Kev on stage is another one. He built uh this whole thing as a God fearing Christian. He was able to put out all these things without, it sounds terrible, and people might have an issue with it, but without the direct threat of the organized church, he was able to put out content and
So what?
really be about
So
God.
in your opinion, how important is for somebody to start learning how to do content creation?
It's in my personal opinion, I I can't speak for anybody else. I think it's incredibly important. It's the way. It's the next wave. It's genuinely the next wave. The wave is going to be here for a while. I think it's a skill set that's going to become invaluable. You now, as someone who just got finished with the fresh job hunt, there are, for the first time I remember in my life, people literally hiring content creators. I'm like, if any of you are familiar with Robert Half, they're a temporary staffing agency, and I remember seeing jobs of just like, we need somebody to create content, we need content curators, create content, people to build branding for us, and I'm just like, bro, this is wild. Like, they're out here indirectly hiring TikTokers, they're indirectly hiring people who make content,
Yeah.
and it's like this thing that is now an invaluable skill. It's going to be an invaluable skill if it's not already, and we're seeing kind of the decline of the celebrity endorsement. And I don't know if you guys haven't noticed, but I'm seeing a lot less celebrity endorsements and more influencer endorsements.
Yes.
I'm like, hey, isn't that the guy that danced at one time? And I'm like, and now he's and it's funny because I read the comments like, what's his name, Niche Cooks or something like that. He got a brand deal with Grill Masters, and he's like, all right, guys, listen up, we're gonna make chicken sandwiches, and they're like, oh, yo, bro, got a deal with Grill Masters. That's so dope. And they saw promising quarters that quarter, and it's just like, take the hint. If comedians can do it, if at home makers can do it, you can do it too. And that's the thing. And I remember, I think it might have been you or one of my friends. I'm like, bro, pastors, ministers, teachers need to take the hint from these comedians because they've been winning. They've been winning on every platform, and it's invaluable. Like, the thing is now, to get in and to create content is insanely easy. There
So
should be
tell me
no reason.
so tell me how in this how do you fit in all of this? That's what tell me the company that you're starting, how you fit in all this, and what is your purpose and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the primary thing of taking all those past experience of all the stuff and embracing the change is one of the bigger components of me making the shift was to start the company that I'm building called Watchtower Media. Basically, for overarching thing, Watchtower Media is built to teach people how to create content in every single aspect that they can. Doesn't matter what you're into. My whole purpose, and throughout these entire years of going through all these things and going through all these transitions and all these random skill sets that I've built, is my sole purpose in life is to create creators.
And Dinah says, one of the reasons I didn't end up taking my art to gallery because social media became my virtual gallery.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So
This-
I do want to
yeah.
talk, I do want to say that I do not believe that social media will ever replace church and
No,
will
it
ever
can't.
replace it will replace being going to church and being present at a church. So
Mhm.
it will not replace, but I do believe
It's true.
that that content creation
Hmm.
will be a tool added. Just the same way when I was a little girl, I don't know if some of y'all remember that church was so against TV and having TV shows, and it was the devil and blah 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 and stuff
With
like
the
that.
television.
It was a television. It was, oh my God. But then as time went on, we saw the value of having a TV and having a program and reaching other people that otherwise you wouldn't.
Yeah,
To the point that now, we had entire TV networks on it. You had entire TV networks on it.
yeah.
So
It's
I'm like,
funny because
oh,
they were just like, hey, yo, television's the devil. Guess what? And you guys see TBN though, and then they were just like, social media is the devil, and then now they were like, Jesus, won't you come my way? We all saw the TikToks. We all saw the TikToks. We all saw you wearing jeans and matching t-shirts.
So I do know that social media will not replace going to church.
Yeah,
Definitely, definitely.
honestly, it
However,
genuinely can't.
it's gonna be a new tool to reach people way faster in places that you couldn't reach any otherwise, or places that you wouldn't have access, or it would take you long. So now we're reaching people instead of, like, it's crazy for me when I look at the stats and I see 400 people saw this video, 500 people saw the video and replay or on time, and I'm thinking, when would I ever get 2,000 people in
No,
one
no,
room to watch an episode of something we created? Like,
no.
I look at the TikToks and you say there's 6,000 people there, right? Or 10,000 or whatever. And you say, well, not all of them are watching. That's okay. But when we ever get 100 people in one room, or 200 to listen to what we have to say. So
Right.
it's really breaking content creation. And this is where you and
It's a big
I was just
disruption. Yeah.
following your lead and all this. And you're the reason why it helped me start content creation,
Yeah.
because you open up my eyes and you say, hey mom, this is a different way. And I'm like, no way. And you kept showing me, and hey mom, this is what Facebook does, this is what a live does, this is what a TikTok. And I am, for example, your first client, you can say. And if I've had a little bit of success so far, is because you guided me through every step, and you said you can do it,
And,
and
well, I
this
just
and this.
call it like it is. You sold enough videos to put a down payment on your car. Let's call it what it is. This small victory. It's like I literally don't know if anybody else has done that. And that's the thing. Like, I've seen you firsthand pay bills on passive income that you got from, like, I I remember, where did we go? I think we went to Boss Chicken one time, and then you got out your card and you held it. You're like, paid for by Facebook. And then and I was just like, okay, pues dile a Facebook that I want an extra ranch.
Yes, but yeah, so it is. So let's going back to your purpose and how you're going to help these creators. And how is it that you would help them? You said that, if you can walk me through that again, how your purpose in helping these content creators to do that.
So, again, my the whole purpose, and the thing that I kept seeing and understanding and really relating to myself is literally two words: just create creators. That's it. And the thing is like, I don't want it to get misconstrued, because a lot of times the word create is like, well, only God can create. And yes, 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 that this is very true. Only the creator has the ability to create. I'm not calling myself a creator, but through those things that I've been given, I can teach other people to create, because there's people that I will never be able to relate to or talk to, but you can.
Yes,
And if you can take the same, and this is the thing, that's the whole trick, I guess, of all this. That's the whole trick of the whole thing. The whole purpose of this, that for a $50 microphone, literally this $50 microphone, through a $40 interface and a cable I got for $2 at IKEA, I can now share this message with all of you. Now imagine if you learn these concepts and do it for yourself. Like, who can you reach? There's people in your community, there's people that vibe with you, there's people that can lock into you, there's people that watch you, and there's people that will listen to the way that you speak. Like, there's people that I'll never be able to relate to, but you can.
exactly.
And the whole idea is, when people learn how to become creators, it's like salesmen. There's a term I heard a while ago, is if you teach a salesman, if you teach a person to sell, they'll never go hungry.
Yes, yes, I've said that
And
many times. Yes,
and it's like, and that's the thing. It's like, it's so true, because again, I've worked sales, and I can
yes,
sell just about anything. And the thing is like, that skill set is invaluable, because once you learn how to create, you can create anything. Now, it's you need someone to guide you, because I remember in your content creator journey, once the light bulb clicked, you're like, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do this. And I remember trying to talk you out of a kitchen channel where you were going to make exclusively like the one thing, and I'm like, yes, that works, but there's a direction to that. and
Yes,
that's the backside of this whole watchtower media thing, because it's learning how to create isn't enough. It's learning how to focus at creation, and it's learning how to figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at. Like there's people who are, for example, maybe 2 3 years ago, no one would have ever taken you for a podcaster. They're
yeah,
like, oh, Miss Maria, she's so good at teaching. Oh, she says some wise things sometimes, or oh, she's such a good prayer warrior. But now people are like, oh yeah, Miss Maria, I've seen her podcast a couple of times. Her posts are really good. And then by extension, you can now exercise those other things that you know, that you've had experience, and that you've used. So all your random skill sets and your random experiences
correct.
now become useful. And it's the whole idea, because once you learn how to create and once you become a creator, your options are endless in every which direction.
And Pastor Jason says, technology also translates translates so your messages can reach people who don't even speak your language. Didn't something like that happen in Acts?
I think so. So like that, I have to read it again to figure it out.
Yeah,
But no, absolutely, and that's the thing. Like it's you would be tapping into the creativity of content creation, and that's 100%. 100% a thing. My whole thing is, believe it or not, everyone is creative. Everyone is creative,
absolutely.
and it's just learning how to figure that out and how to make it work for yourself, because there's other, I mean, I'll be honest, there's like, I guess, exterior motives behind it, because once you learn how to be a content creator successfully, there's stability that comes out of the other side of that, because then once you learn how to get that to earn passive income for you, now you become less reliant on the traditional structure that inhibits
Correct.
people so often. Because again, I only relate it to what I saw. I remember when my dad had to work a full-time job, get out of work, and we had to set up for church.
How many in your experience and what you've seen, how many pastors, ministers, even just regular people like me have made the switch of becoming content creators and leaving their traditional jobs, their traditional, and just go full time in content creation?
So it's funny because you would assume that now, most people find it digestible if you talk about it in age demographics. So you have like Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, all that, et cetera, et cetera. Believe it or not, from the 40 to 50, 60 year old bracket, that's the most profitable niche, the profitable creators. Then right after that are people my age, like the 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and then you have everyone else, like the 19s, teens, and all that.
And
And
that's really interesting because I read that and I'm like, I
mhm,
couldn't understand why people within the 40 and 50 and that
they're
range
the most
were
profitable. Yeah.
what are the most profitable podcasters and YouTube channels. And it clicked because we have something to teach.
Yep. The when
Simple as that.
once
We
you
have
get
learned enough
to,
to teach. We
yeah.
have learned enough to show the new generation how to do things. That's why it's called YouTube University.
So there's this interesting thing that I begin to understand, where the most profitable niche right now are the people that are selling courses, selling books, selling
Yes,
merchandise, selling things. Those, it's like, I'm probably using around, but it's like a trickle down effect, where you have your generation of people sharing their knowledge to
correct.
my generation, right? Just like
Correct.
you said.
Yes.
However, you guys are like, your generation is understanding I can make a replaceable income, and we're knowledgeable enough to hunt down knowledge that will pay the $3
Yes.
for the secrets to the universe. And
Yes.
and honestly, that's all it is. It's only like $3 4. I mean, secrets out, people are becoming millionaires $3 at a time.
Yes.
And
Yes, it sure can. Yeah, it
and
sure.
that's the thing. It's once you understand that it's infinitely scalable, as long as you provide value, you are now creating a demand. And that's the thing. It's transferable knowledge. So
Yes.
like people my age, so people in your generation are like, all this experience, all these things. I've been a cook for 30 years of my life. I've been a
Correct.
sous chef for Wolfgang Puck, whatever, whatever. are you starting to cook for the first time because you're trying to impress somebody, or maybe because the groceries are so expensive you're not going out to eat anymore? Cool. For $4, there's this one book that you can download on your phone, and now you can make every single meal
Yes,
that won't be a TV dinner. And I'm like, cool, I got $3, let's do it. So now, because your generation now has knowledge plus applicable experience,
correct.
it adds so much
Correct.
value to your
Absolutely.
content that now I can be like, and you guys are so like your generation is so used to breaking things down to teach us, because most of you are already grandparents now, that
Correct.
you now know how to break down this information. You're like, dude, it's not that complicated, just do this. Now when we learn it, we pass that down even simpler, and we whittle it down to the most effective strategies, and
Correct.
now it becomes an infinite loop of sharing knowledge. And that's the whole thing of creating creators, because once a someone who understands creation gives that gift of that light bulb turning on to another creator, they now take the basics of that they understand and duplicate it infinitely. And that's the whole idea of that's why everyone needs to become a content creator. Everyone, I promise you, has a lane. Everyone,
Everybody has something to teach for sure.
honestly.
And that's even in that, that's one of my things that I like to do. I like to help people because you're always helping with the technical side of it, with the production side of it. You're real good about that. And that's why we have that group social up, because I like the social part of it. I like the like I've learned some of the stuff, but I focus more on, okay, let's find your niche, let's find your message, let's build confidence, let's practice how to say it, let me help you feel good enough of what you're going to say, let me get the points, the agenda, let me show you the just the creative content creation part of it. And because
Yeah, yeah.
you have the como se dice,
On
you
the
have the
tech
talent,
side.
and you have the production side of it.
Mhm.
So if somebody has a lot of talent and somebody has a lot to say and they
Yeah,
have a great message, you would come in and say, okay, let me get it together. This is how you actually do it. This is
yep, yep,
that's where
yep,
you, with the technology, help them guide that message, because they come with a message, they come
yeah,
with what they want to say, they come with a talent, but you are
yeah.
just there to say, okay, this is how we're going to take it to the world.
And it's I guess in simple terms, everyone can have a successful show if they had a media guy. I'm just trying to be everybody's media guy.
Yeah, there's your
And
slogan.
that's the whole idea. And this stuff isn't hard, dude. Like
I'm
again,
doing
this
it right now. I'm
yeah.
seriously. If people see the setup, I can't turn the camera, but it's just like,
And
I
you know
put,
what's
and
you know
I've
what?
even put the, like, for all of you who want to know
Yeah.
the setup, we put it in the Amazon. There's a click in the link, and then I'll take you to the Amazon store. You can see this mic, you can see the little camera, and just the computer and stuff, and it's really crazy. Then you have TikTok, because for those of you who know, we're going live on TikTok as well. So
And that's the whole thing.
if I'm doing it, y'all can do it for sure.
And that's the whole thing of the and this kind of to bring it all back in. Like me, the whole thing was embracing change allowed me to figure out the concept of innovation. It allowed me to figure out the concept of evolution. So once I know how to find that first step in that staircase, now I'm just teaching everybody else how to climb stairs.
All right, awesome. So, well, let's land this plane. And last thoughts. Last thoughts. When people, what would you like to say to those people who are afraid of making that transition, jumping, doing it, that they're having issues doing it right now? What is your final thoughts? Look in the camera and tell them your final thought to those people that were in the same boat as you were a couple of months ago.
Sure. There's a saying that necessity is the mother of all invention, right? So you can't become the person you're supposed to be until it's needed. That's the only way. That's the only way I can explain that. The person you need to become doesn't exist yet, because then you haven't let them come out, and that's the whole idea. Jump into it. Uh, it's okay to be scared. Respect the emotion, but don't stop. You know, it's okay to be scared, but don't stop. That's really the biggest thing. It's okay to be scared, but don't stop. because
All right. Well, so thank you so much for love you, my son. Love you, and we'll stay around. We'll
you only cried 2 times, I
I
think.
only cried 2 times. I didn't even
Probably 3.
I was gonna even cry. Oh my god. But hey, I'm just speaking from the heart. So I want to thank everybody. Make sure you click, you like, you share. This episode is going to be on our YouTube channel. If you follow the link, it'll take you to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. And as long as you guys keep supporting us and clicking like, sharing, and commenting, that will give us more space and more time to bring more people in and gather more people to share more message and keep this podcast going. So thank you so much, everybody. God bless you and good night.
Good night. We'll see you guys later. Peace.